Today we're going to do the second part of section 2.2 on conditional statements. So starting off with, we're going to talk about negation. And negation is just a statement. In this case, P is not P. And the symbol for the negation is right here, that little squiggly line in front. Basically what a negation is the opposite of the statement. So for example, M is the midpoint of AB. If I asked you to negate that, you would say M is not the midpoint of AB. So if it's true, making it untrue. So moving on to four vocab words. We've already talked about conditional statements, and we did that last Wednesday, actually. We didn't have class on Friday. So the conditional is the if-then statement, and it has the hypothesis and it has the conclusion. Remember, the hypothesis is the if statement, and the conclusion is the then statement. So moving on, the converse of a conditional statement would be flipping those two around, making the then statement now the if statement. So if you look, the conditional was if two angles have the same measure, then they are congruent. So the converse of that is taking that then statement and making it the if statement. So if two angles are congruent, then they have the same measure. Just flipping those two things around. The inverse of the conditional statement is negating both the hypothesis and the conclusion. So if the two angles have the same measure, then they are congruent was our conditional. If we negate both pieces, we would say if two angles do not have the same measure, then they are not congruent. So opposite of both statements there, both pieces. And then the contrapositive is flipping that inverse. So it's the negation of both. So opposite of both statements, and then flipping the order of it. So it's the converse of the negation, basically. So we started with if two angles have the same measure, then they are congruent. And the contrapositive, we're going to flip the two statements and then make them both opposite. We're going to negate them both. So then it would become if two angles are not congruent, then they do not have the same measure. For those of you at home, I highly suggest either taking a screenshot of this chart and printing it out, or taking a couple of minutes and copying it down, because this is going to be very, very, very helpful to you when you're doing your assignment and then later on when we do our tests and quizzes. So for the example, it says write the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive of the conditional statement. Use the photos to find the truth value of each. And we're given a picture of a butterfly and a moth here. And it says if an insect is a butterfly, then it has 4 wings. So does that butterfly have 4 wings? At the picture, the butterfly has 4 wings. It has the 2 larger ones in the front and then 2 smaller ones in the back. So our job here is to write a converse, an inverse, and a contrapositive. So we are going to start with the converse. And the converse is simply flipping the if and then statements. So the then statement is now going to become the if. So let's focus on that. It has 4 wings. So we can say, we don't know what it is. We can't start with that. So we can say if an insect has 4 wings, then, and then our if statement was an insect is a butterfly, then it is a butterfly. Going back to our pictures, If an insect has 4 wings, then it is a butterfly. Well, let's take a look at that moth. It has the exact same wings that the butterfly has. So if an insect has 4 wings, it is a butterfly. That would be false because a moth also has 4 wings. Next on our list is to write the inverse. And the inverse is when we negate the actual conditional statement. So the inverse, it said if an insect is a butterfly. So to negate that, we can say if an insect is not a butterfly. And then our then statement, then it has 4 wings, would be it does not have 4 wings. So looking at that statement, if an insect is not a butterfly, then it does not have 4 wings. So let's look at our pictures. A moth is definitely not a butterfly, but it has 4 wings. So this inverse statement would be false as well. Last on our list of things to write is the contrapositive. Oops. And the contrapositive is simply taking the inverse and flipping the if and then statements. So the then says it does not have 4 wings. So we're going to say if an insect does not have 4 wings, then our if statement said if an insect is not a butterfly, then it is not a butterfly. So let's take a look at that statement. It says, if an insect does not have 4 wings, then it is not a butterfly. If it doesn't have 4 wings, it can't be a butterfly. That is true because a butterfly has to have 4 wings. And I did Google that just to make sure. So the converse and the inverse were both false. And the contrapositive was true. So in our conditional statement that we're given, that was true as well. So that moves us into the next vocab word here that says logically equivalent statements are related conditional statements that have the same truth value. So the conditional statement, our beginning statement, and our contrapositive were both true. So those are logically equivalent statements. And the converse and the inverse were both false. So those are logically equivalent statements as well.